He wakes September 8th. He lies in bed, strokes his head. Baby, I'm dead. He walks to the door. Drives far away. Same shirt as yesterday. Same smile, same hair, same lunch. Looks at himself in the rearview mirror. He sighs and he says, how's it all come to this? So fish in the water, watch you swim. Swim, swim all around. Straight to the sea. We used to be those. Mother said. We're organisms that evolved into humans with this uncertain schism. Dig up the ground. All bones be found. Neolithic humans. Equal to us. I'll save my time. I'll save my
Hi everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. We're Big Bad and back and dressed in black. Look at that, I actually got the memo.
Yeah.
At Brian Electric.
Indeed.
Josh, how are you?
Yeah, good, Warren, yeah.
Good. We have a local Brighton band called Wrong Trousers,
Yeah.
which did not get their name from Wallace and Gromit.
No, so they say.
Anyway, fun times. We're here. Now, you probably remember that Josh and I did the Tascam, was it Model 24?
2400.
2400, that's correct.
Yeah.
And we've done the 24, we did that at the Village. So what we're doing now is the bridge. What is great about this is it's designed for, my personal humble opinion, for people that have a setup that they've had for decades. Because frankly, in the mid-90s, I had a Soundtrax 32-channel console, a Topaz, and I had 3 ADATs. That's still a pretty okay console. I made records on it. I made a couple of records, did okay on ADATs.
Yeah.
So imagine you're me, fast forward, you've still got this gear. Maybe you've got kids that have just gone off to college and now you're like, let's go back. Got a spare them. Let's get back to the music. And I get asked this all the time. They're like, they don't want to sell the console. They don't want to sell all the outboard compressors and the EQs and reverbs and delays. And some of those Alesis reverbs are freaking awesome, to be honest. So instead of like throwing everything out, they want to upgrade and get away from ADATs. So that's where this comes in.
First off the bat, I think it's a functional tool. It does exactly what you think it would do. It's a multi-track recorder, but it's also super easy to use. In terms of flexibility, it's D-subs on the back, and every track's independently record enabled. Actually reminds me of, we used to have an MTI-80 here. It reminds me of the kind of the remote control
It does
for a
look
tape
like that.
machine.
Yeah, it does.
Because it's just record arm buttons and monitor selection buttons for all 24 tracks independently. So you can do overdubs and you can do live tracking. And it's also an interface for a DAW. And you can use it as a controller as well. So you can sync it up and actually have it operate as a transport controller for within Pro Tools. If you did want to do a bit more of a hybrid setup,
Nice.
it works quite well in that regard. But you can use it obviously completely without a computer as well.
But that does mean you could also have it as a redundant system.
Exactly. So you could run these two things in parallel. This is what me and George were talking about. Earlier, we were saying that if you were doing this to record your live mixes, so you're a live sound engineer, it's got rack mount as well, so it can go in a rack. You could have a SD card to record every live mix, and you could have it plugged into a computer to have a redundant system for the recording as well.
That's pretty nifty. Yeah, I did hear a couple of people talking about, when we did the 2400, talking about the bridge and using it for live. So that actually makes perfect sense. Well, without further ado, we're going to get into the recording. Josh has been making, how long have you made records in the studio?
Since 2014.
So 10 years of experience in this room.
Yeah.
So I'm going to let you take over.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Okay, great.
Okay, so now we're in the control room. Just want to talk through how some of this stuff is set up. And I've got George here today with us as well. So George, you've been working at Brighton Electric.
Yes.
And you're kind of like how do you describe your role?
In-house engineer at times.
Yeah.
I work at the bar sometimes.
Cool.
Bit of everything, really.
Yeah, just jump in at all levels. So George has been here today helping us get all this connected. And I think the first thing to say is that with this unit, with this Tascam bridge, we're not using it in the way that you might use it because we're in a commercial studio. We've had to kind of connect things in a way that makes sense for the setup and because we're filming. So we'll do lots of explanations and loads of detail about how I think the best way you could use it in your home studio would be. Basically, you're going to see some adapters, you're going to see some kind of like patch cables and things. It's because we're in this studio and the way we've had to do it to set it up. But let's start by talking about maybe just the signal path. So we've got all the microphones there plugged in into the tie lines in the other room. So you've got your stage box in the middle of your room and that could go into your mixer. So you might have a larger kind of old school Tascam mixer or something like that. And that would be where you get all your gain levels and faders. And we're using this mixer here today. The way we've got it connected up in here is we've plugged the microphones into the tie lines, which have appeared on the patch bay down here, coming out of the tie lines on the patch bay and going into the desk. And then out of the desk, we're using the insert points on the desk to get it to D-sub to go into the Tascam Studio Bridge. Again, if you're in your studio, you may have to buy a couple of D-sub connections to connect to the Tascam. But once you've got those, they're just super solid connections. They're not going to come out and wiggle around. They'll be there for ages and they're going to just sound great and super clean. After the Tascam, we've also got it routed through to Pro Tools. Now, you're not going to be hearing any of this Pro Tools stuff. It's just kind of as a backup system for us. So if you see Pro Tools on the screen, don't worry about it. That's just for the screen capture, for the screen flow. So you can kind of monitor. We're not really recording onto that. All of the multi-tracks that are going to be available in the link below are going to be from the direct SD card slot on the Tascam bridge rather than the Pro Tools files. Then over here on the Tascam unit, we're only using 16 channels today. So we have the first 11 are going to be our drum mics. Then we have a bass mic and a DI. Then we have 2 guitar mics and a vocal mic on 16. And as you can see on this unit, the way we're going to get this to work is we've got these D-sub connections just going straight into the back. And then to arm them, you just have these record enable buttons here. Much like you might see in a DAW, we have a simple record arm buttons. This also might be more familiar to you if you use a remote tape controller, say something like from an Atari MTR-80. You might have that kind of system for just arming the tracks. It's just working straight away, to be honest. I can already see there's some levels coming through and everything's there, nice and simple. The direct outputs of the unit also just function right off the bat. No kind of digging through menus or systems or anything like that. Super straightforward. We're monitoring directly off of this phone's headphone output here. Obviously, so if you're in your home studio, you might be the producer and you can just wear your headphones. But if you wanted to as well, you could just connect that to a set of stereo monitors to listen out loud, or to like a monitor controller, or back to the desk, or anything that makes sense for your setup. All of these individual channels have individual monitor input controls. So we've got all of these set to analog because we're tracking it straight to analog rather than USB or digital. So you could connect this to your computer and use it as an interface as well. The way I see it is as a analog recording device, kind of rather than using a DAW, you could just use this. So we're going to record onto this, but you could equally leave this set up, and when you did want to use a DAW, just plug your computer in, and then it's just there as your interface as well. So that is a nice perk. You can do both things with it. Then on the monitor section here, we've got a flip between the input and the meter, just on that switch there. It's pretty straightforward. You can't really get too confused. If you're familiar with Tascam products, the user menus are really straightforward as well. So you can go into the menus and change various different things to do with the monitoring controls, or if it's stereo or mono or whatever else in there. SD card goes in here. It's got a little inbuilt metronome as well. If you wanted to record to click, then you've got that functionality. You don't need to use a computer. A couple of the features you might miss that you might not be aware of with the Tascam Studio Bridge is that it can actually function as a DAW controller, as a transport controller. So your play button, your record button, your stop button, you could just have that fixed there for your DAW as well if you wanted to. So you don't have to press record in 2 different places at once. You can press record in one place, onto the SD card and off the computer, again for that redundancy. And it does have a few different MIDI functionalities. So you could have sequences going kind of in and out of it to synchronize things. So if say you had like a main sequencer into some drum machines, into some synthesizers, say you're doing like a new order kind of big synth project, again, you can do that without using a computer. This is just going to function as the recorder, but you can still have that MIDI functionality in there as well. And then there is also a foot switch input for tap tempo for the click track and things like that. So if you're the producer in this room, you could tap along for the band in the other room and just like match their tempo really nice and easily and streamlined. Other functions that you might use it for, so we're using it in the studio today, but you could equally use it on stage.
Yeah, so you could have everything running into a live desk similar to this, and then take it out the outputs of the desk, so you can actually multi-track record your live sets, and it's so small, so you could just sit that by the desk or on side of stage.
Yeah.
You can also rack mount it, so if you had a flight case, you could chuck that in there.
Definitely. So yeah, if you're like a touring live sound engineer and you just wanted a way to just capture multi-tracks, but you love your old desk that maybe doesn't have that functionality, this would be a super thing just to rack up with your gear, press record at the beginning of the show, and you've got the stems that you can mix after.
Yeah.
And of course with it being D-sub as well, it's not loads of crazy looms and cables, just like big connections.
Yeah, simple setup.
Simple setup. So that's one way. Then this is another way that's a little bit more complex, a bit more of a hybrid system here. So this is using it kind of as it's intended as a bridge between 2 different worlds. So we have our analog mixing console, mics and stuff going into that. Then from there into the Tascam bridge. And from the outputs of the Tascam bridge, you could actually run these across insert points. So you could actually take this back to the faders on the desk and be mixing here, whilst at the same time be tracking it on your DAW, in your computer, kind of in 2 places at once. It's like a redundant system, basically. If your computer crashes, imagine even as a live thing, if you're running that live and then really, really important recording setup, you've got 2 ways that you can capture that digitally. And it just kind of seamlessly integrates between a really old school, cool analog mixing desk like this and your DAW. This is the way that we're primarily using it today, is as a recorder. you know, as it kind of is so good at doing, we're just going mics and instruments into the desk, out of the desk, into the Tascam bridge, and then we're monitoring it straight from there. We're actually going to, once we've done the recording, we're going to send it back out of the studio bridge and into the desk to mix it analog as well. So basically keeping this completely away from the computer, and all the kind of positive workflow things that come from not using a DAW. I'm sure you don't need to be told, but you know, just having no screen means you can just focus on the music. You're not focusing on the waveforms and the grid. You're just focusing on, does it sound good? Are the parts right? Is the performance good? And I know a lot of people out there who really value that workflow. A lot of artists would rather do that kind of mindset to keep it more natural. And they might usually go into a tape machine or something. And in this place, the Studio Bridge is kind of acting like the tape machine, but it's super reliable. You never run out of tape. It's on an SD card, super clean, and good compact form factor as well, so it's nice and small. Okay, so we are going to just quickly talk through the mic setup for the session, but before we do that, I just want to introduce the band. So we have today the Wrong Trousers with us in the studio. So starting on drums, George is playing the drums for us today. George is playing a Black Oyster Pearl Ludwig that we have at Brighton Electric, with a kind of mixture of some pasty cymbals and some Ks. And what are the hats that? Istanbul hats, nice. Then we have on bass, Jai's playing bass for us. Jai, what's the bass you're playing today?
It's a Tokai it's been in my family for years, so it's kind of like the bass.
The bass, it's a nice bass, it sounds great. We've got that currently plugged into a Ampeg going through a bare-faced 6x10 cabinet, which we'll talk about in a minute. We have Bobby on the guitar, rocking the DIY taped up machine.
90 pounds shit strap. Played amazing by Warren.
Yeah, exactly. So it must be amazing. And then we've got Bobby's guitar running through to an AC30, which is in a different room. And again, we'll talk about that in a minute. And on vocals, who's kind of hidden away at the moment, tucked behind the corner. Amazing. And that's a MD441 in there. So just to talk through the mics then. Let's start down with the low end. Down at the very bottom here, we have this AKG D12 pointed right deep in, facing towards the beater of the drum. This is to kind of get some of that attack and transient from the beater hitting that skin. Then on the outside of the kick drum, we have the FET 47, which is kind of going for the other thing, the kind of more low end, more subby extension, kind of a classic pairing combo. Then over to the snare, where we have I think it's a 14.5 Ludwig Black Beauty-esque thing. I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's a little bit larger than the traditional Black Beauty. But it's a great snare with just two 57s top and bottom on that. Then we're going to the toms, where we have a pair of MD421s for the rack and the floor, and then a pair of 87s on the overhead. And the keen-eyed among you will notice that these aren't actually a matched pair. They're different colours. They're from different times. This is not orchestral music. The fact that they're not a match pair isn't too much of a big deal, to be honest. Ideally, they would be, but when we're sound checking, it's going to sound great. No problem there, I'm sure. Finally, on the drums, we just have a mono room mic, which is kind of put a bit further away from the kit, just to capture a bit of the kind of the glue. Going to combine all of these individual drum elements together in the room, which should just make it sound a bit more natural. And then finally, through in the hallway, which is a tiled little walkway space, we have a pair of Neumann KM184s to capture some like stereo live ambience. And again, when we're sound checking, you should hear that too. So that's the drum rig. Then we have on the bass rig, it's just going through a DI, out of the link output of the DI into the safe. So let's have a little look over here. This is our Brighton Electric's coolest feature, very old safe, which is actually in the building. It used to be the offices for when there were trams in Brighton. And this is where they would keep all of the money. So all the gold coins would be kept in there before we had card payments. That was the bank. In that safe, we've got as I said, little Ampeg top amp and a bare-faced cabinet. And then the mic on that is a Heil PR30, just pointed at one of the cones, kind of head on. The only thing with this safe is, because it is just a big metal box, it can be quite resonant. It can be a bit honky, is kind of the way I would describe it. It's like really nasal sounding if the amp is too loud or if the mic is too far away. So just from my experience and knowing that has a very resonant sound to it, that ISO space, I've just got the amp a bit quieter, mic a bit closer, less of the room. If you can call it a room, it's more like a horrible chamber. Definitely worth noting that for the band as well, there's only one handle on this safe and it's just on the outside. So don't go in it. Because if you were in it and I closed the door, you're never coming out. But it's a cool little feature. We just use that as a little like isolated space to record things in. And then on vocals through here, we've got a couple of baffles to just separate it out from the drums, with soft side facing this way, kind of keeping this as like the live part of the room where there's more reflections and more room. And then where the vocal mic is the soft side of the baffle, the more absorbative side of the baffle to absorb some of that high frequency reflection that might come from the vocals or from other things in the room. Just keeps this a bit of a dead space, basically. But because we're doing this completely live and in the room, we didn't want to separate everybody out too much and say put vocals in the vocal booth really far away. We want to keep the band nice and close together and hopefully having a bit of like eye contact as well. So although you can't see Bobby, you can see through Jai and George on bass and drums, so that should keep like timing good. So one of the baffle panels has got a transparent cutout to keep like good eye line contact for the band the whole time. And that's the setup in here. We're gonna go through to the room next door now and just do some sound checking basically. Make sure everything's working and see how the Tascam functions when we're sound checking. So we've done 3 takes of the song, chatted to the band, they prefer the second take, and now we want to do some overdubs. So you might kind of be thinking that the way we've done this and set this up so far is to just do it completely live, 1 take, 2 takes, 3 takes, pick a take and then we're done. But we can actually do overdubs with this. Because it has record arm feature buttons, we can actually unrecord enable all the drum tracks and the bass tracks as well and the vocals. And we could say, for example, just leave the guitars record enabled and we could just do another take of the guitar if we wanted to. We're actually going to do this as an overdub. So we're going to patch in some new channels into this and record some extra guitars into the multi-track recorder. Then we've just got more stuff that we can mix with later, basically. So it's going to keep things nice and produced. It's not just a live tracking machine, we can actually produce a song on it. We're going to actually do a couple of takes of the vocals again because they'll have drum spill from the live tracking on them. So we're going to leave that in record and then we're going to patch in some guitars on top as well and just record that over the top. And to do that, we're just going to easily just go to the menu and load up take 2, which is the one that they preferred. And that's all loaded up now. And go to the beginning of the take and we're just going to hit record. Okay, so we're about to start doing some mixing, and the way we've got it set up now is that the Tascam bridge is kind of acting like our tape machine, and over on the controls over here, I can just hit the play button and then toggle backwards and forwards throughout the timeline to trigger different parts of the song and the arrangement. This is all being sent through onto this console here. I've moved some of the channels around from when we were recording so I can access some of the compression features that are up across the top here. After this, the main stereo out of the mixer is being fed back into 23 and 24 on the Tascam bridge. And what that allows us to do is just to print our mix, again, not using the computer at all for that, which just means we're keeping it outside the box, keeping it real. Obviously, when you're starting a mix, you can start anywhere you decide you want to. I'm just going to start with the kick drum and get that kind of low-end foundation working. I'm going to start with the kick and then generally build what I call the drum mix, and then I'll start putting other instruments on top of that. So I'm going to go to a section of the track where the kick is. There we go, that should be playing now, and then bringing the kick in. So this is the kick in mic. This is the D12. Which I always like for this kind of thing because it's got a bit more of the attack on it is kind of more mid-range focused rather than being more top end. So it's kind of more suited for, let's say, like more old school genres, whereas opposed to like a D6 or even a D112 can be quite bright and present in the top end and works better for like heavier, rockier stuff. But with this, first thing I'm thinking really is just to take some mid-range out of it. So I'm just going to boost that, find the place where I want to take it out. I think it's about there. So it's probably about 300 or 400 on that kick drum. Just going to toggle it back to that part of the song. So yeah, there's with the EQ in and without. So that just tightens it up a bit more. Now I do actually have compression on here. It's a little bit of just uniform compression that's just more or less compression. I'm guessing it's some kind of variably controlled compression. Bit less than that. Yeah, not too much, just touching it a little bit. So that's a kick in mic. Then I'm going to bring in the kick out mic here. Oh, there we go. So I just realised that was panned because I'm not facing the speakers. It's a bit tricky to tell. And there's the kick out. So the kick out is a lot more low end focused. So the two things together are kind of offering my complete kick sound. And then on the faders, I can kind of mix then like more top end, more attack, or less, or more low end. The out being the low end and the in being the attack. Let's go forward a bit into the song to a later point where it gets a bit heavier. Cool, there we go. And let's get the snare involved. And back again. So for the snare, I'm really just thinking about brightening the top end, getting a bit more sharp transient out of that snare top. And again, just touching it a little bit with the compressor here. At the end of the day, I don't have loads of controls, so I'm just going to do the best I can with the tools that I've got. One parametric mid-band selectable frequency EQ, and then a high and a low that will be fixed shelves. Bringing the snare bottom in. Now on the Tascam bridge earlier, I did flip the phase of the snare bottom, so I know that that should be working well for us. Overheads. Bit of low end out the overheads. There's kick, snare and overheads in that. I'm going to bring in the toms there. I'm going to apply a kind of classic EQ for the toms, again just taking a little bit of that low mid out. Boost a little bit of high for some attack, a little bit of low for some body. Okay, so then the last two things to bring in for the drums are the hallway, which was a big stereo hallway mic pair we had. You can see how that works with a kick. So with the hallway, you don't have too much, and just kind of blur it out. But it definitely works from style. And then we also had a little mono room as well, which is just this. And for this mono room, I'm going to see if I can kind of get a bit of parallel compression going on by just putting a lot of compression into that channel and then blending it in. Now obviously this isn't true parallel compression. It's kind of like just extremely compressing one element of the drum mix. Obviously sounds quite extreme on its own, but we're just going to blend that in. Cool. Might add a little bit more top end onto the overheads. Maybe a bit less low end in the room mic. So I'm going to start bringing in the bass now. And for the bass, we just had a bass DI, which is going to offer us some good low end, and then a bass mic. So there you have the bass, turn the channels on. So there's the DI. And with these two, I'm going to try and get the low end out of the DI and more of the kind of mid-range from the amp. So here's the DI. Bit of low end from there. Compress that low end. It's kind of like treating it almost like a multi-band compressor, having these two channels. If I make the DI all about the low end and compress it more, I can hold that in place. And I can use the amp for more of the kind of top end texture. So another thing I've just done with this bass is rather than it just being completely subby and just completely full the whole time, I'm going to use on the top part of the console here, there's a high pass filter at 100 Hertz. And you might think, why would you high pass your bass? That sounds mental. But I'm going to try and separate the kick and the bass a bit. If I put the high pass filter on my bass DI at 100 Hertz and then say boost it a lot, I can kind of create a bit more of like a pushed up shelf with the high pass and kind of get this interesting curve that's going to happen, and hopefully carve a little bit out of my bass guitar for the kick drum to sit in. So that's just the high pass on its own. This is without any EQ. With the high pass, but then boost the low end, and then bring the kick in. That kick's kind of sitting below that now. And the bass is kind of a bit further up, around 100 Hertz is where the prominent low end of the bass is. Put a bit more upper mid-range into that bass tone, around 2K, something like that, on the amp signal. Then I'm going to bring a bit more top end into the kick, I think, the kick in. It's all getting there. So, bring in one of these guitars. I'm actually going to go back to the beginning of the track now, because the beginning of the track starts with a guitar. to EQ this guitar too much. I really like the tones we got. We had a 57 and a Royer. Classic kind of combo, and the 57's obviously adding that kind of top end, and the Royer's adding a bit more of that kind of heft and bottom on that guitar. If I listen to it, I don't just think, oh, I want to EQ that. It sounds good already. So if you think that way, then you probably don't need to add any EQ. Better not overdo it. That might change later when we start putting more things into the mix, but for the moment, we're going to see how these two sit together. We've got the original live guitar and then an overdub of the guitar. It's panned off to the other side. So there is a delay on the desk. It's going to reset all the effect sounds. We've got a delay and we've got a reverb. So I'm kind of thinking the guitars could do with a little bit of space. So I'm going to send that to effect 1 from the 57 channel, the brighter one. Which is just a plate, I think. That's just on a plate, about 2.4 seconds decay. Obviously that's too much. Making sure it's working. I think it's about time we got some vocals involved. Here we've got the main lead vocal channel. Bring the gain up a bit on this. We recorded this with a MD441, which is a quite nicely focused dynamic mic, which has got a good amount of top end on it, but I do find still in an arrangement it's nice to just add a little bit more. So I'm just going to go back to a bit of an earlier part of the track.
Mother said, we're organisms that evolved with humans with isms and schisms. Dig up the ground, all bones be found. Neolithic humans evolved to us.
Gonna high pass that.
Has it all come to this?
So we'll make sure that character really comes out in the vocal. So I'm going to try and boost a bit more mid-range actually. Not something you do on every vocal.
Fish in the water, watch it swim. Swim, swim, swimming all around.
Not loads, just a little bit of 5K.
We used to be those. Mother said.
So you're going to boost it more around 2 or 3.
We're organisms that evolved with humans with isms and schisms.
Something like that for the moment sounds good.
Dig up the ground, all bones be found. Neolithic humans evolved to us.
Then I'm going to send some of the delay I've got set to a kind of faster slap around 60 milliseconds. And we're just going to put that on the vocal. Back to that section again.
Same shirt as yesterday, same smile, same hair, same lunch. Looks at himself in the rearview mirror, he sighs and he says, how's it all come to this? Fish in the water, watch it swim. Swim, swim, mother said. We're organisms that evolve into humans with isms and schisms.
Just gonna put a little bit of the reverb in there as well.
Dig up the ground. Our bones be bound. Neolithic humans evolve to us.
Okay, then we just got a couple of BVs to throw in there as well, which are most prominent in the first half of the song.
Same lunch. Looks at himself in the rear view.
Around here?
He sighs and he says, how's it all come to this?
There they are. So I've kind of prioritized the top end and upper mid-range for the lead vocal. So I'm going to bring these a bit more low mid. Not much, just like, you know, 1K rather than 2. And boost that a tiny amount, 1 or 2 dB. And it's going to make these not quite as present as the lead, so they blend in nice.
We used to be same shirt as
And then a good bit of slap back on these as well, bit of reverb too.
same lunch. Looks at himself in the rearview mirror. He sighs and he says, how's it all come to this? Drives far away. Same shirt as yesterday. Same smile, same hair. Same lunch. Looks at himself in the rearview mirror. He sighs and he says, how's it all come to this?
Nice, liking those BVs now. Next thing to check is just how the vocals kind of sit across different parts of the track. Now, this is quite a dynamic kind of track really. There's a lot of different sections, a lot of different energies, and the vocals do a few different things. So it's not guaranteed that the setting that I've just put this on is going to be the best setting for the vocal all the way throughout. So I'm kind of just going to go through and make some mental notes on if there needs to be any real-time automation when we're printing the mix to change different effects, maybe change the gain or just ride the fader, generally speaking. Or if maybe I can find a static mix that works, but we'll see. Okay, so now I'm just going to listen through our static mix and see if it's ready to print.
He wakes September 8th. He lies in bed, strokes his head. Baby, I'm dead. He walks to the door. Drives far away. Same shirt as yesterday. Same smile, same hair. Same lunch. Looks at himself in the rearview mirror. He sighs and he says, how's it all
reverb.
Evolution. It's time and money. Concept created by man to oppose God.
A bit of reverb on the bass here. Because there's not much else going on. It's just on the amp though, not on the sub. Make the drums a bit more roomy. Lead vocal. Great, so that was me printing the mix in. As you were watching that, you probably saw that I was doing quite a lot of live automation, really just to kind of react to the song. I've listened to it enough today that I know that certain things are happening at certain times. So as a producer, it's super important that you know the arrangement if you're gonna go down this route of automating on the fly and printing your kind of performance of the mix back in. But hopefully you agree with me, but I think it's really fun. I had a good time doing it. And hopefully that comes across. If you're so used to just working inside the computer, clicking around with a mouse, being put outside the box like this, having the limitations put on you, like only a 3-band EQ, only compression is a little control here. I think it just offers a lot of workflow benefits and often just creative benefits as well. You know, so much control you can have with just volume without having loads of fancy plugins, just to make the rooms a bit louder in certain sections or to make the effects a bit louder. I think if you didn't have all of these things on faders at your fingertips, you probably just wouldn't have done the automation. And I think that really helps a mix of a track kind of just breathe and feel alive, and hopefully kind of guide the arc of the song as well, make things kind of jump out, make things come closer, and overall just make it a bit more of an enjoyable experience to listen to.
Josh, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks Warren.
A lot of fun, as usual. I think it's pretty nifty. Been here the whole day, got to witness it. You were talking earlier about how it looks like a transport for a tape machine. It really does, doesn't it? It reminds me exactly of that. It's well built. I like the fact that they made it into a little piece of furniture. It looks actually like a studio piece of equipment. Quite often, I get stuff sent to me and I'm looking at it going, this is so ugly. Sometimes things are just so ugly. So maybe that little bit of effort kind of makes me love it a bit more. But I do remember on the 2400, we did a simultaneous 2400 and Pro Tools.
Yeah, we did the API 1608 and the 2400 at the same time.
And didn't we prefer the sound of the converters on the 2400?
Yeah, I mean, they were just spot on, crystal clear.
Yeah, so we do like the converters on this. So if you're thinking about doing something like this, I don't know who else is making something that's just a specific hard disk recorder that also can be a redundant system with a computer. Maybe there are other people, but to the best of my knowledge, this is the one. If you want to use it for live, or you've got a home set up with some DA88s or some ADATs and you're having a hard time finding tapes that don't get chewed up all the time.
Yeah.
this is a perfect replacement for that.
I think also, even if you're new to music production and say you didn't work on all these old systems, you might just be fed up of looking at screens.
Sure.
And you might want to go into that kind of working with tape mentality and the workflow benefits of being limited and just committing to the tape, essentially. But obviously don't want to get a 24-track tape machine and all of the expenses and the complexities that come with running that machine.
Right.
This just gives you that workflow without all of the downsides.
Great. Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, and chesh. Goodbye.